What's good? Salutations to the nations. Angel Knots, it's your boy Young Sinai.
Angel Knot.
All right, here we go. Well, before we get started, we're going to go ahead and get things started with a prayer. All right. Father God, thank you for today. Thank you for anybody that tunes in, Lord. Just ask that you bless them and their families, watch over them, protect them, let them come to know you. If they don't, if they do, let them get even closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Angel Knot.
All right, so this video is titled How This 55-Year-Old's Comic, How This 55-Year-Old's First Comic Made Over $5 million. All right, and this video was posted by Matt, there's a bunch of T's, Comic and Manga History. All right, let's check it out.
Years, something unprecedented has happened in the comic industry, and her name is Emile Ferris. She has quickly become one of the most important, celebrated, and respected creators in the field of comics. But she didn't publish her first comic until she was 55 years old. A year before it came out, she was on the brink of homelessness, cleaning houses to make ends meet after losing her career to a debilitating illness. So I wanted to know, how does this happen? How does someone later in life, with no industry connections, no experience, and facing a host of disadvantages, create such a seismic shift in this art form? Well, to understand that, we have to look at Emile Ferris' extraordinary life and her even more extraordinary comic, My Favorite Thing is Monsters. A lot of us have
y'all ever read this? I've never read this or heard of this, but let's check it out.
Stories we'd like to tell. Stories that burn inside of us, that we know would be hugely popular if only we could find the time to get them down on paper. Then life gets in the way. The years slip by and our ideas remain on the shelf. My Favorite Thing is Monsters could have easily been such a story. Once, in her 30s, Ferris had a chance to move to LA and work as a writer, but she chose to stay in her hometown of Chicago and focus on raising her daughter. A single mother, she made ends meet as an illustrator and sculptor, including sculpting a number of McDonald's Happy Meal toys. This could have been the whole story of Ferris's life, a commercial artist and mother who had a great idea for a story that she just never got around to telling. But her comfortable existence was about to be thrown into chaos. As Ferris dressed for her 40th birthday party, her 6-year-old daughter warned her not to go. She was worried that something terrible might happen that night. And she was right.
Wow.
But Ferris didn't listen. She went to the party and sipped sangria with her friends on Lighthouse Beach. She doesn't remember the end of that party.
Oh my goodness.
She surfaced from a state of delirium 3 weeks later in a hospital bed. She tried to figure out what was going on as a parade of doctors marched in and out. They explained to her that she'd been bitten by a mosquito, that she contracted West Nile virus, as well as meningitis and encephalitis. One doctor revealed something else. Each time he had visited, he had been putting needles in her foot. She hadn't noticed. She was paralyzed from the waist down. The neurologist told her she would never walk again. But the worst was still to come. She had significant damage to her right hand. The hand that had once been so dexterous at sculpting now couldn't even hold a pen. Her career as a commercial artist, the entire stable life she had known up until this point, was over.
Wow.
But a new life was about to begin. One of the burdens of being a comic book YouTuber is that I'm forced to read so many comics. And if I don't make these videos fast enough, someone might leave a mean comment and hurt my feelings. But thanks to today's sponsor, Factor, I have a solution. Stores pressures owned as picks of Alan Moore. Activity. Convenient. Matt, MA box plus 20 time Ferris had faced medical difficulties. She'd been born with severe scoliosis. As a baby, doctors told her parents she wouldn't live past 30. She couldn't walk until she was 3 years old. But while she couldn't walk, she drew. And years later, at school, when she could walk but couldn't play on the playground, she made friends by telling stories. Art and storytelling became her means of escape. And when, after almost a year in a full-body cast, her spine was corrected, she knew she would live past 30 and prove her doctors wrong. And now, at 40, she would once again turn to her art and storytelling to carve a new life for herself. She and her daughter moved back in with her mother to save money. She began physical therapy, and after a few weeks, she was ready to begin. She asked her daughter to duct tape a pen to her hand.
Oh wow, that's dedication.
She couldn't use her old illustration style, so she built up an accumulation of short, scratchy lines. It took hours, it was hard work, but as she worked, it grew easier. She completed this self-portrait, and her daughter added in the final detail, her standing up from her wheelchair. She wouldn't give up on art. She wheeled down to the Art Institute of Chicago and presented them a portfolio of her illustration and sculpture work.
I went to the Art Institute online.
Along with a disclaimer. She would never be able to make that kind of work again. She hoped to get into computer animation, which wouldn't require
I dropped out though, so I don't know if that counts.
the same physical dexterity. Then came the other disclaimer. she couldn't afford the tuition. But the admissions at the Art Institute saw something in her. They not only accepted her, but offered her a full scholarship. But unfortunately, she was really bad at computer animation. It just wasn't clicking for her. But still, she wouldn't be defeated. She took other art classes, honed this new, scratchy style that she could still achieve after her paralysis. Because it was during her studies that she became re-engaged with comics, with that powerful mixture of word and image. She realized that comics had always been part of her life, that she had loved creepy and eerie as a kid, that she'd grown up with Mad Magazine, and even the illustrations in Dickens had had a huge influence on her. But this also forced her to confront the fact that as a young girl, she had been abused by her uncle, and during this abuse she had been watching cartoons, an experience that made her reject cartoons and comics for decades. But now, in her 40s, she confronted that trauma and was once again able to fall in love with cartooning. The works of Art Spiegelman, Chris Ware, and Alison Bechdel opened her eyes up to the storytelling possibilities of the medium. It became her mission to create comics, but not everyone at the Art Institute embraced this idea. Do you think that stopped Ferris? Of course not. She would add her art to her writing assignments and add words into her art assignments. And for her final thesis, she would make her first proper comic. She put everything she had into this 24-page comic and submitted it as her thesis. And not only did she graduate, but in defiance of her neurologist's predictions, she walked on stage to collect her diploma. But even after graduation, she wasn't quite ready to go back to commercial art. Those 24 pages had lit a fire inside her, and she obsessed over finishing the story that she had started. Thankfully, in recognition of her work, the Art Institute awarded her a grant. Not a lot of money, but enough to keep her afloat and allow her to keep working on her comic. And so begins an epic undertaking. She continues working in this demanding style, working 16 hours a day to make progress. When the grant money runs out, she sends the pages she has out to agents, and eventually one takes her on. They find a small publisher willing to take a chance on her, who gives her a small advance. Once again, it's not a lot of money, but it's enough to keep her going. But as she works, the project gets bigger and more complicated. The publisher no longer wants it, but they let her keep the advance. As the money dwindles, she starts cleaning houses to keep the lights on.
Wow.
But by night, she keeps working. Soon,
How many of us would keep chasing our dreams like through all of this, having to have a pen taped to your hand and, just all of the troubles that she's facing, she just keeps on going.
the money is gone, but Ferris won't give up. Sometimes a friend will give her $20 to buy groceries for the week. When she can't afford food, she goes to Whole Foods to eat free samples. She goes to the bank to drink free coffee. Her life is falling apart, but her manuscript is coming together. She keeps working like this for 6 years. Her agent believes in the book and keeps sending it out, but publishers keep passing. Not 1 or 2 rejections, they accumulate 48.
Oh my
But
gosh.
finally, someone says yes. She sells the book to Fantagraphics. She's broke, she's wrecked, but she did it. Her book is finished and it's going to be published. Soon, she'll
That
even
art
make
is
some money
hard.
from it. Fantagraphics prints 10,000 copies, a fairly modest amount. But once again, luck is against her. The shipping company carrying her book from the printer in China goes bankrupt. The boat is impounded by the Panamanian government, leaving all 10,000 copies of her book in limbo. The
Oh my
planned release
gosh.
date of Halloween 2016 comes and goes. This is devastating for Ferris. She needs the book to sell so she can make money. She starts a GoFundMe page to support herself while she waits and waits for the shipper to get her book back. After almost 6 months, her book finally arrives in America. We'll talk about how it's received in a minute, but first, let's actually take a look at what she spent the past 6 years making. Personally, I'm drawn to comics which use the unique form of this medium to create movement in my mind. Works that use composition, detail, speed lines, blur, panel layouts, and body language to create motion. Works that tell their stories visually, only relying on words to enhance the images. And my favorite thing is Monsters does none of that. So why do I like it so much? I like it precisely because it isn't what I'm used to. It challenges everything we perceive as proper comic grammar, blasting the medium back to its original components, text and images. It then reconstructs those materials into something entirely new, something that is clearly a comic book, but also feels alien to everything we've seen in the past 100 years.
Yeah, that looks super unique. I kind of want to check this out.
The book takes the form of a diary, a notebook kept by a young girl named Karen who envisions herself as a werewolf. Ferris restricts herself to the tools Karen would have had: a spiral-bound notebook, colored ballpoint pens, and felt-tip markers. This whole setup can be purchased today for less than $10. This is a clue to Ferris's success. Ferris is already facing a lack of mobility in her hands, but she chooses some of the most difficult tools to work with. It's an insane choice, but Ferris persists because it serves the story.
Ooh, that's
It is
an
a
ugly
vision for her
puppet.
story, and as we already know, no obstacle will stop her from completing it. This notebook approach critically alters the way words and text interact. Some pages will be a drawing of a scene from Karen's day. Others will be a long journal entry scattered with accompanying drawings, often literal but frequently colored by Karen's interpretation of the world around her. There are times when more conventional comic layouts creep in, but then the next page will be Karen's ballpoint pen interpretation of a classic work of art, surrounded by commentary from her or her brother Dees. It energizes the whole work, as every page works on multiple levels. At the top, there's that surface compositional level. The work that Ferris, as Karen, produces with these ballpoint pens is jaw-dropping. She hones that scratchy style caused by her paralysis and extends it to its logical conclusion, filling each page with hundreds of lines, building up these almost sculptural forms. The pages where she reimagines covers of creepy or eerie would be worth the price of admission alone. But just beneath that compositional layer is the literal storytelling layer. As Karen records the events of her days, her
Hey, y'all know how to draw? Let me know if y'all know how to draw. Let me know how I can draw better, okay? I can pretend, kind of, sort of draw, but let me know, point me in a direction where I can draw, better. I want to learn how to draw without taking a lot of time and effort to learn how to draw. Something I can squeeze in easily in my day as a 38-year-old with a full-time job and a business and a wife and 2 kids. I want to be able to draw this good in 5 minutes or less a day. Anything like that?
thoughts and her experiences in words and images. But beneath that, there's a final layer, which is our interpretation of Karen's work. The book tackles a lot of heavy adult themes, but all through the eyes of a 10-year-old. So it's left to the reader to puzzle together the world around her. As Ferris blends these 3 layers on every page, we're asked to engage deeply with this work, and a tense dramatic irony emerges that forces us to confront our own knowledge of the darkness in this world, even as we see things through the eyes of someone innocent. But beyond the intellectual level, this technique is just a shockingly effective way to tell a story. The layouts and the use of lined paper definitely remind me of Lynda Barry's work, and the experiments with the form maybe owe something to Chris Ware, and the idea of capturing a child's point of view can be seen in plenty of prose fiction. But the way it all comes together is fresh and exciting. And that's the trick, perhaps the other secret to the book's success. It manages all of these formal innovations without ever sacrificing readability. It's never a slog, it never feels experimental or challenging. It doesn't want to stump you or stop you in your tracks. You could hand this to someone who'd never read a comic before and they would still get it. Because all the cross-hatching in the world isn't what makes this book work. It might catch your eye, but no comic, no matter how technical or innovative, can work if it doesn't tell a great story. And here again, Ferris succeeds. The story is ostensibly a mystery,
that's a pretty
although
picture.
If you're here for pulse-pounding revelations, you're probably in the wrong place. While mystery is the frame and horror elements lend it flavor, the real star of the show is the characters themselves and the intimacy with which we're invited into their lives. The cast in Monsters, which is probably smaller than you're expecting given its size, are real, complex, flawed, and ultimately deeply human beings. They're the kind of characters who stay with you long after you close the book, whose voices you'll still be hearing weeks and months later. Monsters owes as much to Charles Dickens as it does to Jack Davis. As someone who loves literary comics and character-driven work, it's really refreshing to see a cartoonist working in that tradition who embraces rather than rejects genre storytelling. I love a good memoir, but man, I need a break sometimes. This is a work of passion, of obsession, of years of self-sacrifice, and in February 2017, the world is about to see it for the very first time. The 10,000 copies of My Favorite Things Monsters finally land in North America and start their overland journey to bookstores and critics. Ferris, for her part, is broke. 3 days before the release date, the first review appears in The New Yorker. They say of Ferris that her mastery of comics, her pyrotechnic drawings, and her nested narratives are already placing her among the greatest practitioners of the form. A week later, Friday's New York Times publishes an extensive profile.
First, Emma Ferris was paralyzed in her book.
On Monday, The Guardian prints a long interview.
I didn't want to be a woman. Being a monster was the best solution.
2 days later, NPR.
My favorite thing is Monsters is a dazzling graphic novel, tour de force.
Here's a glowing review. The word is spreading. Ferris is brought to tears at a comic convention when Art Spiegelman, the author of Mouse and one of her greatest inspirations, tells her that he loved her book. He would go on to describe her as one of the most important comic artists.
That's got to be something, when your favorite artist tells you, that they like what you do. Like, for example, I do Christian hip hop, and I really used to listen to Eshon Burgundy a lot. And when I got to rap to him and he was impressed, man, that's like the dopest feeling ever.
Artists of our time. This unlikely book has struck a nerve with the literary mainstream. Why? Perhaps it's because the character-driven narrative is more in line with contemporary literary prose fiction. Perhaps it's because she tackles a number of timely themes. Or perhaps it's just because it's so undeniably good and so original that no one can ignore it. Not just critics, but actual people are liking it too. It debuts at number 8 on the book sales charts, ahead of every Marvel and DC book. By May, it would be up to number 5. Fantagraphics orders a second printing of 30,000 copies, the largest in their 40-year history. It gets translated into a dozen languages and has been in continual print, with sales now over 100,000 copies and millions of dollars. So let me answer my original question. How did this happen? How could somebody later in life, facing so many obstacles, find this much success with their first comic? Well, the answer is that no one else could have. Monsters wasn't an overnight success. It's not the product of 6 years of hard work. It's the product of 55 years of living, of surviving the struggles and challenges of life, of the confidence and persistence that can only come with age. Ferris's story is a reminder that it's never too late, that nothing can stand in your way if you are determined to pursue your dreams.
And there's things you want to do in life that you're not sure you can do. But I'm here to tell you, not only can you, but I will come to your house and I will kill you if you don't.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
All right, yo. All right, so that was dope, man. That was very inspiring. I think that my takeaways was, even when things get hard, to keep on going forward, and it's never too late in life to pursue your dreams. It makes me think about Colonel Sanders. I think he was like in his 60s or something. When he launched KFC, something like that. I could be wrong on the age. Also, the other thing I took away is listen to your kids, because she said her daughter told her do not go to that party, and she went anyway. All right, let's go ahead to the next thing. All right, y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. Salutations to the nations. Peace.
Angel Knot.